we're going to look at volume. So we have recently learned area. Now we're moving on to volume. The big thing to know about volume is we have to have a three-dimensional shape for volume. And in 6th grade, we are only going to work with rectangular prisms. So if you look at this, you can think of like a shoebox or a cereal box. Those are rectangular prisms. And again, they have to be three-dimensional. That is because we have to find 3 numbers. So for that three-dimensional shape, we have to have 3 numbers. We're going to circle them and multiply. So if you can multiply, you are going to like volume. And then just to verify, we're going to underline the name of our shape to make sure that we are using the correct formula. And again, that shape will be a rectangular prism. So let's look at our first example. It says, what is the volume of the rectangular prism shown below? So we have volume, and it says rectangular prism. So we are going to find our 3 numbers, circle them, and multiply. I also want to show you on the star chart, we do have volume on our star chart. So if you find volume, rectangular prism, if we go over here, we're going to fix this formula. So kind of like in area when we marked out 1/2 and put divided by 2, we are going to completely mark out this volume formula, and we're going to write our own. V equals length times width times height. That is the formula we're going to use for volume. Length times width times height. Those are our 3 numbers. So if you want to do that on your star chart, we can. Or we can just look for our 3 numbers. So we have 9, 6, and 4. Those are my 3 numbers. It's a three-dimensional shape. So I know I can write V equals 9 times 6 times 4. And then we have learned we can only multiply 2 numbers at a time. So I can do 9 times 6, which is 54. And then I can do 54 times 4. Okay, so let's stack that up because I can't do that one in my head. 4 and 4 gives me 16. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 1 is 21. So when I do 54 times 4, I get 216. Now the next thing we need to talk about is the units. So on this one, it said yards, so I'm going to write yards. And then in volume, since it's a three-dimensional shape, we are going to put a little 3 up there. And we say that 216 cubic yards, or 216 yards cubed. So instead of a 2 like area, volume has a little 3. Okay, let's go down to the next example. The rectangle shown represents the base of a rectangular prism. So notice this is not a three-dimensional shape. This is just a rectangle, but it also says it's just the base. The height of the prism is 5 centimeters. Which measurement is closest to the volume of the prism in cubic centimeters? So we do want volume, but in volume, we just talked about we need 3 numbers. I only have 2 in my picture. And again, this is a flat picture. So the other number in this problem is the 5 centimeters. So if we were going to make this a three-dimensional shape, you could kind of think of it like this. That 5 would go on this piece. That would be the 5 centimeters that's added, because we already have the sides, we have the top and bottom, so we need to know how deep that picture is. So that 5 is my 3rd number. So for volume in this problem, I could say V equals 3.5 times 14.2 times 5. Okay, and actually I'm gonna rewrite that and put my whole number first, so that way it's a little bit easier for me. So I'm going to do 5 times 3.5 times 14.2. Because if I put the 5 first, I don't have to deal with decimals as much. So let's solve the first 2 pieces. 5 times 3.5, okay? So 3.5 needs to go on top. We do not add zeros when we multiply, okay? So 5 and 5 gives me 25. 5 and 3 is 15, plus 2 is 17, okay? And then I have one number behind the decimal, so I make one hop, so 17.5. So now I have 17.5 times 14.2. So now I need to multiply those two. So let's stack that up. I have 17.5 and then 14.2. Okay. And then we need to multiply that through. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. Okay, I'm going to mark out my carries, my 2, and put my smiley face. And then I'm going to go to the next row. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 2 is 30. And then 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. Okay, so I'm going to mark out my carries, my 4. When we get to the third row, I'm going to drop 2 smiley faces. And then I can do that last multiplication. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 7 is 7. And 1 times 1 is 1. And then we can add all those numbers up. Okay, so I have all zeros. And then I have 5, 8, 7 and 7 gives me 14. And then 1 and 1 gives me 2. Okay, so if we look, we have a Joe Schmo, because this one's super close. This would be 24,000. That's 25,000. And we haven't done our decimal yet. So that's a good Joe Schmo to get rid of. So I need to go back up here, and I'm going to circle the numbers behind the decimal. So the 5 is behind my decimal, and the 2 is behind my decimal. So that means I need 2 hops into my answer. So I have 248.50 centimeters cubed. So now I can look at my answer choices. I need a whole number of 248. This one has all the right numbers, but it has a 24. I need 248, so that is also a Joe Schmo. They messed up on that placement. This one has a 49, which is not even close. And then this one, if I added that 0, that would be a perfect match. So my answer is C. So just remember, when you have volume, length times width times height, 3 numbers, circle and multiply.